If you're watching Story Junkie for the first time, welcome or welcome back if you've been here before. We tell stories here about what people do when they are pushed past the edge of what they will accept and what they build when they come back from it. I used to think I was good at reading people. 22 years of marriage will do that to you. You learn the cadence of someone's breathing, the way their voice changes half a pitch when they're lying, the particular stillness that falls over them when they're hiding something. I thought I knew Red better than I knew myself. I was wrong, but I was about to get a very thorough education. It was a Tuesday in late October when my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I was making dinner chicken piccata. I thought to myself I'd leave the phone until dinner was done. The kids were grown and gone. The neighborhood group chat was usually someone complaining about leaves on the sidewalk, and Red had texted me that morning to say his flight to the Chicago conference had landed safely. So I almost didn't check the phone, but knowing myself, I wouldn't rest until I read the message. I set down the wooden spoon and picked up my phone. The message was from my friend Denise. It was a screenshot from Instagram. A woman I didn't recognize, her handle was Lena, had posted a photo from what I immediately clocked as the United Business Class cabin. She was tilted toward the camera, glossy-lipped and glowing, one hand raised to show off a champagne flute. The caption read, "Upgrade! Business class with my favorite person. Chicago, here we come." And in the photo, just visible at the edge of the frame, a man's arm in a grey sleeve, the sleeve of the jacket Red had been wearing when he kissed me goodbye that morning. I recognized the watch, a Seco Presage silver dial. I had given it to him for our 20th anniversary. I stood in my kitchen for a long time before the smell of smoke rising from the stove ripped me from my daze. The chicken was burning. I turned off the stove, set my phone down on the counter face up, so that woman's smiling face was the last thing I looked at before I went very, very quiet inside. The quiet wasn't shock. Shock has a different feeling. There's a particular kind of grief that arrives when a thing you've been half suspecting finally reveals itself, when the shape you've been seeing in the dark steps into the light and turns out to be exactly what you feared. It's like the moment before you lift something very heavy, almost like the gathering of strength. Our marriage was peaceful, no raised voices, no mistrust, just bliss, or so I thought. I texted Denise back 3 words. I see it. Then I called my sister, Pauline. "He's with someone," I said, before she could even say hello. "On the plane right now." She posted a photo. Pauline was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then she asked, "What do you need?" That is the only correct response I needed. I have loved my sister for 53 years, and that moment is the reason. "I need you to help me think," I said. "I need to not be stupid about this." We talked for 3 hours. By the time I hung up, the chicken was cold and hardened in the pan. The wine on the stove had reduced to a sticky amber residue, and I broke down and cried. I cried until I had nothing left to give. Then I started planning. I didn't panic or call Red. I wouldn't confront him over the phone and give him the opportunity to craft a story or tip him off in any way that I knew what I knew. I've watched enough women in my lifetime make that mistake, call too soon, cry too hard, give the man a 3-day head start to polish his lies before he lands. Instead, I did what I had always done best. I worked. The first thing I did was document everything. I screenshot Denise's message, then went directly to Liv Lauflena's Instagram profile and screenshot her entire grid. Lena Marsh, 34 years old, listed as a marketing consultant in her bio. Her account was public, foolish girl, and the further back I scrolled, the clearer the picture became. A weekend in Nashville in March. Spontaneous road trip with my person. A hotel photo in April, the kind of place with enormous white robes and bath trays, captioned Self-Care Sunday. And in May, a dinner photo. She was reaching across a white linen table to hold someone's hand. The hand wore a Seiko Presage, silver dial. This had been going on for at least 18 months, judging from the feed I saw, possibly longer. I emailed everything to myself, then to a private Gmail account I created that evening with a name Red wouldn't recognize. I printed the relevant posts at the library the next morning, paid in cash, then took them home and locked them in the fireproof box in the back of my wardrobe where I keep birth certificates and insurance documents. Then I called a divorce attorney. Her name was Heidi Dalton, and she came recommended by Pauline's colleague, whose divorce, from all accounts, had been a massacre. Heidi had an office downtown with clean white walls and an excellent coffee machine, and the calm, considered manner of someone who had seen everything twice. She wore her glasses on a chain around her neck and took notes with a green fountain pen. Not once did she look sorry for me, and that I appreciated enormously. "Tell me about your assets," she said, and so I did. The house, a 4-bedroom in a leafy suburb I had chosen and he had reluctantly agreed to, was worth just over $800,000. We had purchased it 16 years ago, and the mortgage had been paid off 3 years prior, largely on the strength of a bonus I had received from my company. My name was on the deed, so was his. The investment accounts, a joint account with roughly 200,000 in index funds and 2 individual retirement accounts. I had managed the joint account for the past decade. Red had one from his first years of employment that he rarely talked about and that I had rarely thought to ask after. I now asked after it. Heidi made a note. "Is there anything else?" she asked. "There's a business," I said. "Well, a partial stake in one." 3 years ago, Red's cousin had started a logistics company. Red had invested $40,000 as a silent partner. Money, he told me, came from a quarterly bonus. I had no documentation of this, no paper trail I had personally kept. Heidi wrote that down too. "Good," she said when I had finished. "You've given me a great deal to work with." I retained her that afternoon, paid the retainer in cash from the emergency fund I kept in the fireproof box, a habit from my grandmother, who had survived things that made her deeply suspicious of banks. Red thought it was eccentric. It turned out to be prophetic. Over the next week, while Red was in Chicago sending me dutiful check-in texts, asking about the garden, inquiring whether I'd watched the documentary series we'd started together, the audacity of it, the sheer audacity, I began to quietly move. I photographed every room in the house, itemized the furniture, the art, the electronics, the contents of the wine cellar Red had spent a decade curating. I gathered every financial document I could find, mortgage records, insurance policies, bank statements going back 5 years, the deed to the house. I made 2 copies of everything. One went to Heidi, and one went to a safety deposit box at a bank where we had no accounts. Then I called a real estate agent. Her name was Gretchen, and she had sold 4 houses on our street in the past 2 years. I had met her at a neighborhood barbecue and found her to be sharp, discreet, and motivated. I asked her to come by on Thursday, told her I was considering listing, told her I would need it handled quietly. She came by Thursday morning, toured the house for 40 minutes, and left with a listing agreement I had signed with my name alone, which, as Heidi had explained to me, was technically permissible given how title had been structured. "How quickly," I asked Gretchen, "could this sell in the current market?" She smiled. "This neighborhood, 4 bedrooms, this condition, 2 weeks, maybe 3, possibly faster." "Good," I said. Red came home on a Friday evening, rolling his suitcase through the front door at 6:30, with the particular satisfaction of a man who had an excellent week. He smelled of a hotel I didn't recognize, and he kissed me on the cheek, then asked what was for dinner. I had made his favorite again. Chicken piccata. I'd made it deliberately with a very specific kind of attention. I wanted the evening to be completely ordinary. I wanted him to have nothing to report to Lena Marsh when he texted her later, which I was certain he would from the bathroom or after I'd gone to sleep. We ate dinner, watched television. He told me the conference had been useful, mentioned a few colleagues by name, was seamlessly, fluently, impressively normal. He was good. I hadn't known he was this good. It recalibrated something in me. The understanding that this man who had slept in my bed for 22 years was capable of this level of performance. It made what I was doing feel necessary and justified. 3 weeks later, we had an offer on the house. Full asking price, cash buyer, 60-day close. When Gretchen called me, I was in the car, parked 2 streets from our house. I sat very still and said, "Accept it." I'd already found a furnished apartment, 3 months prepaid, in a building in the city where I knew no one and no one knew me. Pauline had helped me move the first carload of things the previous weekend while Red was playing golf. The apartment had a small balcony, good light, and a gas stove, and I had bought new bedding for it in a color Red had never liked. I had 60 days, and I used them well. The week before the close, I arranged for a storage company to come and pack Red's belongings. His clothing, his golf clubs, vinyl collection, rowing machine, his wine, everything that was clearly and unambiguously his. I was generous about it. I left nothing out that was his and took nothing that wasn't mine. Heidi had been very clear with me about this. I did everything correctly. His things went into a climate-controlled storage unit. I mailed him the access code and the address on the day of completion. I didn't leave a forwarding address. Now, close your eyes and try to imagine what it looked like from his side. Red came home from work on a Wednesday. I know because Pauline was watching him from her car at my request to clock the exact moment when he found the house empty. The keys were on the kitchen counter. The walls held faint traces of dust where the art had hung. The carpet showed the indentations of furniture long since moved. And on the counter next to the keys was a single envelope. Inside was a copy of the sale documents, a letter from Heidi's office, and a brief handwritten note from me. I had thought carefully about what to write. I had drafted it 6 times. What I eventually wrote was this: I saw her champagne flute. I saw your watch. I saw everything. My attorney will be in touch. Nothing else. No accusations, no grief, no questions I didn't already know the answers to. Pauline told me later that he stood on the front step for a long time. Then he called her. She let it go to voicemail. He called me using my old number, which I had already ported to a new SIM, and got a disconnection message. He called our children. Our son Tyler told him calmly that he knew, that Mom had told him, and that he needed to call a lawyer. Our daughter Renee said nothing at all. She just hung up. My children. I am so proud of them. The next 2 months were the strangest of my life. I lived in my bright apartment with my new bedding, and I went to work, I went to yoga, I cooked dinners for one, and I was genuinely, surprisingly, peacefully fine. I don't say that to seem hard-hearted. I say it because I think the grief had happened quietly over the weeks of preparation. The long, slow mourning of something I had already understood was gone before the chicken piccata burned on the stove. But Red wasn't fine. He had, of course, retreated to Lena Marsh's apartment. That lasted, according to Denise, who followed her on Instagram for the express purpose of monitoring the situation, informed me approximately 6 weeks. The posts went from couple adjacent, restaurant photos, airport carousels, to conspicuously solo sunsets, motivational quotes, the unmistakable digital language of a woman re-establishing her independent identity after something has gone wrong. In week 7, she posted a photo of a new throw pillow and captioned it, "Finally feeling like myself again." Red had been excised. His attorney contacted Heidi. He wanted to contest the sale of the house. Heidi explained with quiet thoroughness why this was unlikely to succeed. He tried anyway, retained someone himself, sent letters, made demands, but Heidi was unmoved. The house had been sold lawfully. The proceeds had been lawfully distributed. His belongings were in climate-controlled storage, and he had the access code. He asked Heidi where I lived, and Heidi told him to direct all communication to her office. He then tried to find me through mutual friends. One of them, a man named Gerald, whom I had never particularly liked and now had confirmed reasons to dislike, called Tyler to see if he would pass along my address. Tyler said he would ask me, but he never called Gerald back. Then he tried LinkedIn. I had updated my profile to remove the neighborhood and made my contact settings private. He drove past Pauline's house twice. She waved cheerfully from the front window both times. Here is the thing about disappearing on someone. It doesn't feel like revenge when you're doing it. It feels like survival. It feels like the dignified removal of yourself from a situation that was diminishing you without your knowledge or consent. The revenge, such as it is, arrives later in the settling of accounts, in the particular texture of the life you build on the other side. But I would be lying to you if I said there was no reckoning. There was a reckoning. It just happened in a courtroom over several months with Heidi Dalton handling the details. The joint investment account was divided equitably as the law required. This was expected, and I had no quarrel with it. What Heidi pursued methodically, without dramatics, was the question of the hidden partnership stake. The 40,000 Red had invested in his cousin's logistics company, money that had flowed from an account I had never had access to. When Heidi's forensic accounting subcontractor examined the records that were disclosed during proceedings, it became clear that this was not the only undisclosed asset. There was a secondary brokerage account opened 5 years ago funded by diversions from his quarterly bonuses. Bonuses I had known about only in the vaguest sense, the way you know about things that don't interest you, that you trust the other person to handle. I had trusted him to handle it. The total in that account was just under $90,000. Heidi requested it be included in the marital estate. Red's attorney objected. The judge disagreed. The maintenance award, spousal support for 10 years, given the length of the marriage and the disparity in our retirement positions at the time of separation, was Red's attorney's parting gift to him. He had fought it hard and lost. I wasn't in the courtroom for the final hearing. Heidi had told me I didn't need to be, so I stayed in my apartment on my balcony, drinking coffee in the early morning light when she called. "It's done," she said. "Everything we asked for." I sat with that for a moment. Outside, a pigeon was doing something ridiculous on the railing. The coffee was good. The light was good. "Thank you, Heidi," I said. "My pleasure," she said, and I believed that too. I am now 54 years old. I live in a bright apartment in a city neighborhood I have made my own. I know the name of the man who runs the cafe on the corner, and I have a standing order at the bookshop 2 streets over. I've been to yoga 3 times a week for 8 months, which is more than I managed in the entire last decade of my marriage. My daughter Renee sometimes visits on weekends and we cook together and watch old movies. My son Tyler calls every Sunday. My sister Pauline is 12 minutes away, and we walk together on Tuesday mornings before work. I haven't spoken to Red since the divorce was finalized. I have no reason to. He moved, as far as I understand from our children's occasional mentions, to a rental in the suburbs. He is at work on what I imagine are the logistics of reinventing himself. I wish him well in the way you wish a stranger well who is no longer your problem. The woman he went to Chicago with, Lena Marsh, has recently, according to Denise, who checks so I don't have to, begun posting photos with a new man. He looks cheerful. I hope genuinely that he knows what he's getting into. I'm not saying there are times I don't miss Red. 22 years is a long time being married, but slowly I'm letting go of the hurt I never saw coming. What do I want you to take from this? You don't always assume the worst, and love isn't a trap. 22 years of a life shared with someone can't simply be written off as wasted, because they aren't. There were good years and fun times, and I have children I love, memories that are real, and a sense of myself that was built in part through the trials of long partnership. What I want you to take from this is what I learned in those weeks between the photo on Denise's phone and the day I drove away from my own house for the last time, that the most powerful thing you can do when someone has underestimated you is to act from a place of absolute calm. Don't perform your grief for the person who caused it. Don't give them the roadmap of your reactions, and never make a single move in anger. Move in silence and slowly build your case. And then, when everything is ready, when the attorney is retained and the account is documented and the storage unit is booked and the new bedding is on the bed, walk out the door like it was your idea from the beginning. Because it was. He left first. The moment he walked onto that plane with someone who wasn't me, I just made sure he knew it. If this story found you at a moment when you needed it, if something in it felt uncomfortably familiar or quietly validating, or simply like the reminder that composure is its own kind of power, then I'm glad it reached you. We don't always get to choose what happens to us, but we get to choose how we respond, and sometimes the most devastating thing you can do to someone who thought they had you figured out is simply to become unrecognizable to them. I became unrecognizable. It was the most liberating thing I have ever done. Subscribe if you want more and drop in the comments. Have you ever had to disappear to protect your peace? Have you ever made a move so quiet the other person didn't feel it until it was done? Share only what you are comfortable with. We read every single comment. Until next time, stay sharp, stay calm, and never ever let them see the move coming. God bless you.